Good evening, everybody. Good evening. I'd like to call the regular scheduled meeting of the Board of Commissioners to order. Safety instructions, Ms. Evans?
Yes, I'd like to call Ms. Bess, our Deputy County Manager, to give us our safety instructions.
Good evening. To provide for the safety of those attending this meeting, please listen to the following instructions in case of an emergency. First, please take a moment to notice where your exits are. If an emergency arises that prompts us to evacuate, please exit this room in a quick and orderly manner to one of the two doors to your right, and then proceed to the nearest stairwell, directions to which are indicated by the exit sign. Once you exit the building, we ask that you safely cross Granville Street, which is the street that runs beside our building, to our parking lot to be safely away from the building. Our staff will help provide additional direction and assistance as needed. In the case of a tornado warning, please exit this room into the hallway where we will all remain until it is safe to exit. In the event of an active shooter in the building, if there is an accessible escape path, please run and try to evacuate the premises. If you can't evacuate, find a place to hide where you are less likely to be found and lock any doors that you can. And as a last resort, and only if your life is in imminent danger, please fight. Our staff will continue to provide additional assistance on what to do. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Reverend Hines, at this time, would you please offer prayer?
Our Father and our God, we give thanks for another day. Thank you for life, health, and strength. We ask that you would bless our minds and our thoughts, that we might consider the things for this county to make this county a better place in which to live, and that we serve our constituents with joy, with peace, and with honor. Bless us and keep us, guide us, and direct us, and we shall forever give your name praise. For Christ's sake, amen.
Amen.
At this time, you have in your agenda package the meetings of the previous, the minutes of the previous meeting. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the vote sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the minutes are approved. At this time on the agenda, we are calling for a public hearing to receive citizen comments or input on the consideration for installment financing contract. The public hearing is called to order. Mr. Peter, would you please read the public notice?
Yes, sir. The Board of Commissioners, the Board of the County of Edgecombe, North Carolina, the county is considering entering into an installment financing contract, in a principal amount not to exceed $5,500,000, under which the county will make certain installment payments to A, finance the construction, acquisition, and equipping of a new animal shelter, and the construction, acquisition, and replacement of improvements to various county buildings and facilities, and B, pay the costs associated with entering into the contract. The animal shelter will be located at or adjacent to 3005 Anaconda Road, Tarboro, North Carolina, 27886. In connection with the contract, the county will secure its obligation under the contract by a deed of trust, that grants a security interest on the site of the animal shelter and the improvements thereon, the mortgage property, for the benefit of the financial institution providing the funds to the county under the contract. The contract and the deed of trust permit the county to enter into amendments to finance additional projects and refinance projects using the mortgage property as collateral, and the county may grant additional collateral in connection with such amendments. On the county's payment of all installment payments due under the contract, including any future amendments to the finance or refinance projects, the lien created in the animal shelter will terminate, and any security interest granted to the financial institution providing the funds to the county under the contract will be released. Notice is hereby given pursuant to sections 160A-20 of the General Statutes of North Carolina that on September 3rd, 2024 at 6 p.m. or as soon thereafter as practicable in the Jonathan Felton Commissioner's Room, 2nd floor Administrative Building, Tarboro, North Carolina, the Board will conduct a public hearing concerning the approval of the execution and delivery of the contract as described above. All interested parties are invited to present comments at the public hearing on the contract. Signed, Tammy Faison, Clerk to the Board of Commissioners, County of Edgecombe, North Carolina.
Ms. Evans?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, everyone. We have continued to do our due diligence for your consideration of the financing of a new animal shelter and a list of other capital projects. We received bids on the animal shelter as well as most of the other projects on the list of consideration. We've also received proposals on the rates and terms for financing. Included in your packet is a summary of those proposals. We have Mr. Ted Cole here tonight from Davenport and Company who is going to review that with you. That we did get an update in particular on one of those lock-in rates just this morning, and he will point that out to you when he comes to the podium. We will review these proposals, and once we hear from the public, I will make a recommendation on a lending institution. The recommended action will be to approve the attached resolution to authorize installment financing, which will be contingent upon local government commission approval. I do want to point out, you have in your agenda packet, just behind that memo I just read from, a list of projects. That list has been updated because we've had some bids come in just this morning on elevators, and we'll talk about that just for a moment. So we did pull out a couple of other projects that we were considering financing because we needed to bring the total project cost under the $5.5 million. And that also includes the cost of issuance, which was included in the public hearing that Mr. Peters just read. So I asked for Mr. Cole to come up, and he's going to walk through the bid summary that we received.
Tell the public who you are for us.
Sure, I certainly will. Will that be up on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, great. Good evening, I'm Ted Cole with Davenport and Company, and we serve as financial advisor to the county, focused on capital planning, capital funding, like we're here to discuss this evening, and have served in that capacity for a number of years. As the county manager said, we've been working with staff for some time on this proposed financing. Our role is really to source the funding, provide you all with options to consider on the funding, and then if you all decide to move forward, help navigate the local government commission process, because they will have to approve this loan if you move forward, and then ultimately close. So I believe what's on your screen, and maybe what will be on the main screen perhaps,
Yes,
is the updated version of the presentation. You all received something in your packet. It will look very similar. I will point out the updates as we go through this. Okay? There are page numbers on the bottom right corner. If we go to page 2, who's not doing this? Or? Here we go. Okay, got it. See a volume. Well, if you all have it, do you want me to keep going? And I have my copy in front of me. Okay.
we'll catch it.
Page 2, it'll have page number 2 at the bottom right corner. Bank loan RFP overview. Most of this Eric covered. We sent out a request for proposals for funding, and in mid to late July. We sent it to about 50 banks. Ultimately, what we asked for was an amount up to $5.5 million. And we were looking for either a 15-year or a 20-year payback. We received proposals from 5 banks. They're listed there alphabetically. Many of some of these you might recognize. Generally, they're all active in lending to local governments. We deal with them pretty regularly, although they may not necessarily be household names or may not have a physical presence in the county. But they are active in lending to local governments. So we're going to go through a summary of those bank proposals here in just a moment. But before we do that, on page 3, this is a worksheet that we have been working on with staff that is basically establishing what projects might be in the borrowing, and what the total borrowing could look like. So all of the possible projects are listed on the left-hand side, starting with the animal shelter on down the line through line 14, where there was a couple of projects called the 1912 building. As you go across, you're going to see when they were bid, the date for bidding the project, the original estimate, the revised bid, and then column E is it in our model or out? So basically right now, we're just funding those projects with yes. And you can see on the far right, this is the makeup of the potential borrowing. So we've got an animal shelter at 5.2, detention, sheriff's office, HVAC controls, 195,000. You skip down, I think we're at HVAC replacement at 134, and at the line 9 elevator modernization at $1.5 million. That does take into account about 512,000 that was already appropriated in your budget for the elevators. So line 10 in the green, what we're proposing to fund is about 7.1 million. You could drop down a little bit lower. You've got $1,775,000 that's already been set aside for the animal shelter. That is cash that the county has set aside. So you take the 7.1 minus the $1,700,000. Our borrowing for projects would be 5.36 million. A cost of issuance allowance of 135,000 takes us to line 22, 5,495,000. So that is just under the 5.5 million that we asked the banks for.
And Ted, if I could inject here, just to clarify, because I know you're following along with the one in your book, this is where there are some changes, because we just opened bids on the elevator modernization projects this morning. So Stan Liverman, our maintenance director, bid all of them together, including the one that we budgeted for in our current budget. So there are 6 elevators that are included in this. And that's for a total of $2,081,666. That's the total cost. Backing out the 512,843. So I just want to make it clear, because some of these bids came back higher, we pulled some projects out because we had to keep it under the 5.5 million. So what we're contemplating, and with pending public comment tonight, recommending moving forward with the funding for the animal shelter, the $195,000, which is to replace the HVAC controls at the detention center, sheriff's office. You'll recall, maybe at last month's meeting, I asked you to consider, let's go ahead and get that going, because we didn't want those controls to go bad, and they were pretty close to it. But what we will do is we will reimburse ourselves to general fund once we close on the financing, if we close on the financing. So animal shelter, reimbursing ourselves for the HVAC controls at the sheriff's office, the work on the elevators, and then HVAC replacements, and that's scattered throughout several buildings. And then also embedded in that is the cost of issuance, and that is the cost of our financial consultants, attorneys involved, and bank fees, closing fees. So I just wanted to pause for a moment just for you to be aware of, if you proceed with what we likely will recommend, this is what we're planning to do. I also want to go ahead and take this opportunity to say, some of these other things that have been on this list since we first started talking about this during budget season are still needs that we have. And we're going to have to come back and have some conversation about how we might address those and when we might address those. So I just wanted to point that out.
Yeah, and I should clarify, where it says no, it's not that it won't happen, it's just not going to be in this borrowing. Obviously, as the manager said, you all will discuss those projects funding outside of this borrowing. So the request to the banks was up to 5.5 million, and what was published in the paper for the notice public hearing that you're holding tonight was 5.5 million. That's really what's binding us to the 5.5 million. I would just say that if you said, look, I really want to include other projects, that's fine, but what that would do is we'd have to re-advertise for the public hearing. We would be going to the local government commission later, which means we have to have a new audit. There's a number of things that would happen if we decided to increase the amount above 5.5 million. It's not that you can't do it, it's just that this whole process at this point has been predicated on not to exceed 5.5. At the very bottom of this slide, there are a few banks that care very much about the value of the collateral that we're offering. And what we've proposed is to offer a deed of trust on the animal shelter. You're allowed to do that in North Carolina. We are suggesting here that the value of the animal shelter will be equal to the project cost, right? So $5.2 million. So if we were to borrow $5.5 million and secure it with the animal shelter that's valued at $5.2 million, our loan to collateral value would be about 95%. There are some lenders that are just fine with that. They're taking collateral because they have to. They are not concerned about the county's repayment or appropriation of this in your budget. But there are other lenders that care a lot about the value of the collateral relative to the loan amount, and we'll talk a little bit about that. So this is the universe of projects, $5.5 million all in as our cap. We're just a little bit below that based on this list of projects. All right, the next slide, page 4. I want to mention this because it will come into play with some of the banks. The rectangle, the rectangle at the top is the proposed site for the animal shelter. It is sitting on a parcel that is also occupied by the Public Works Facility, the Sheriff's Office, and the jail, and over on the right-hand side, an evidence building. It's all one parcel. There's a process underway to subdivide the animal shelter out of the larger parcel, because ultimately all we want to secure the loan with is the animal shelter. We don't want to encumber this entire parcel. If the subdivision happens prior to our closing, which is going to be, if you move forward sometime in October, then that's fine. We can pledge the animal shelter. If the subdivision can't occur, we would pledge the entire parcel and get an agreement built into the loan documents that everything could be released except the animal shelter post subdivision. So our goal is to ultimately only secure the loan by that animal shelter site and not encumber this entire site. But we may not have the subdivision done in time to do that, but that would then happen after closing. So it would be relatively quick that the rest of this site could be released from the lien. And that's important in case you ever want to do something else out on that site. Okay? All right, so now we're going to get to interest rates. On page 5, these have been updated, particularly at the top, J.P. Morgan. So we have the bank on the left, the details of whether the rates are locked or not, and when we need to close in the middle, the call provisions, that is, what is our ability to pay off this loan early or refund it, and then under column D is the 15-year rate, and under column E is the 20-year rate. Anything in green we have dug into a little further. Those are, I guess I'd call it, the front runners of the proposals. So let's look at J.P. Morgan. We got their rates this morning. They are only able to hold their rates for a day or two at a time. We got the rates this morning. They can be held for 45 days from today. That would mean we would need to close by October 17th or so. And if we want to use those rates, we have to accept their proposal by 5 o'clock tomorrow. So that's the process with J.P. Morgan. If we do all of that, the rate is locked for closing by 10/17, and it would be locked for the entire term of the day. They just can't hold a rate open for an extended period of time. They have a 3.45 rate for a non-callable loan. That's the lowest rate on this page. It's 15 years, 3.45. It would be fixed for the 15-year term. The caveat there is it could not be paid off early. If that loan is non-callable, so it will stay outstanding for the full term. And essentially, you wouldn't be able to take advantage of a potential refunding in the future if rates dropped. nor could you pay it off early if you needed to free up the collateral. All of that is fine, just important to understand that it would be in place through final maturity, and if you wanted or needed to pay it off early, the documents would say you're not permitted to, and you'd be left with trying to negotiate that with the bank. So we would suggest that we should go into this assuming it will be in place for the full term. They also gave an option where you did have the ability to prepay it. And that prepayment would be able to start after 2027, but you'll see there's a higher rate to do that. It's a 402. So the lowest rate you can get for JP Morgan on 15 years at 345. And then we included Webster Bank. They included a 15-year rate at a 404. That rate is locked. We would need to accept it by tomorrow, and it would be good for a closing in mid-October. They also gave a 20-year fixed rate of a 427. And then there were a couple of options from Truist Bank that we modeled up. The first is something called a make-whole call. That essentially is a type of loan that you can pay off early, but you're not going to be able to get a refunding for savings done. You're going to make them whole as if the loan went to maturity. So you can get out of the loan and pay it off, but you're not going to get savings. And that's different from that JP Morgan where you just can't pay it off. Okay, so a make whole is a little bit different than a non-callable. Make whole, as I said, does give you the ability to get out of the loan if you needed to for some reason, but it does not allow you to refund for savings. And then they gave a series of other prepayments. So they're just giving you a menu of you can prepay after 10 years or 9 years or 8 years or 7 years. And you'll see that the longer you can't prepay, the better the rate. So we have good proposals. I know it's a bit complex and there's some terminology here, but these are on market. We do a lot of these RFPs. Rates have come down. Just as a point of reference, we were seeing 20-year rates a couple of months ago at 5 or a little bit above 5. So we have seen some improvement in rates, and we're pleased with the rates we received from these banks. And ultimately, what I think you're going to have a decision is, if you want to move forward, do you want to look at 15 years or 20 years? If it's 20 years, I think we're going to be talking about Webster Bank. If it's 15 years, you have some additional decision to make about which option is best under JP Morgan. It was a question.
So we're coming out of historic rate high rates. What is kind of, where do government rates kind of sit based on history? Like, is 3.42 over 15 years competitive historically, or is that?
Yeah. So we're coming out of it's kind of interesting, right? What we all hear about the Fed, right, is a short-term overnight rate, and it's been at a high level, and that's expected to come down over time with the Fed making their moves. That is not necessarily a direct correlation to a municipal loan. We're actually coming out of some historic lows for municipal borrowing during the pandemic, and coming out of the pandemic, interest rates were really low for tax-exempt local governments. And then they have climbed, but they have not climbed to that same level as what the Fed rate is. So I would say these are not at the high, I mean, they are average. It depends on over what period of time you would want to look back, but it's if I had to characterize it, these are sort of average rates over the last decade. I think that's probably the best way to describe it. Hard to know what the future holds. We do know the Fed is supposed to be reducing rates because they feel like they're making ground on inflation, and they don't want to hinder the economy. But that doesn't mean these municipal rates will drop at the same time. So it's hard to know where rates are going to go in the next 12 to 24 months, let alone 5, 10 years. I think these are attractive rates. when we think about it from a historical perspective. Okay, so that's the universe, and again, I think what you're going to be looking at is, do we want to go 15 years or 20 years? We're going to show you that, and if you're erring or leaning towards the 15-year payback, which option might make the most sense? And that's all laid out on page 6. I realize that there are a lot of numbers here, but it all sets up pretty neatly. The first thing I'll say is we've got 15-year options on the left, 20-year on the right. We've got the bank listed, JP Morgan option 1, JP Morgan option 2, Webster Bank for the 15 years, and on the 20 years we're looking at Webster and Truist. We've got the rates listed on line 4. In all of these scenarios on line 5, we are assuming that you get delivered at closing that $5,360,000. You have the $135,000 of issuance costs. So every scenario, we're funding the exact same amount for the exact same projects that we talked about on that prior page. And then what you're going to see is by fiscal year, assuming we close in October, what is our fiscal year debt service? You'll notice with JP Morgan, the payment starts in fiscal 25. We actually asked in our RFP for payments to begin in FY26, right? We're in fiscal 25 now. We've asked for payments to begin in 26. JP Morgan, their proposal didn't allow that. They wanted to have an interest payment in 25. That's why theirs starts in 25. Everybody else's starts in 26. The other banks were fine with our proposal. And then your real principal plus interest starts for everybody in fiscal 26, and it either runs out to fiscal year 40, which is the 15-year term, or it goes out to fiscal year 45 if you were to opt for the 20-year term. So you can see the fiscal year payment. You go down to line 33, you can see the total principal and interest for each scenario. Principal and interest over the life of the loan. Line 34 shows you the difference to the lowest payment over the life of the loan, which is JP Morgan option 1. So on line 34, JP Morgan option 2, which gives you a little better, not a little, gives you better prepayment, right? But it comes at a cost of about $244,000 over the life of the loan. You follow? And then you go to Webster, their 15-year option total cost is $252,000 more than the lowest JP Morgan. So we're just trying to give you a sense of that low rate from JP Morgan. What additional costs do you have if you go with another scenario? And you can see what those are across line 34. Obviously, when you get into the 20-year loan, it's a much bigger number because we got an extra 5 years of payment. You can think of this a lot like maybe like a mortgage. You know, do I need to go 30-year mortgage to get the payment where I need it? Could I pay it off earlier and get a better rate? Maybe it's a higher payment, but I'm paying it off more quickly and I'm saving interest over the life of the loan. I think that's very similar here. Do we want to pay this stuff off over 15 years or 20 years? Either way, legally works because the expected useful life of the assets are 20 years plus. And then the very bottom part of this, you all may remember from the retreat where we discussed what is the county's debt capacity and debt affordability, and how do you pay for your debt. You have a series of revenues that you budget each year for debt. And what we've done at the very bottom of this slide is identified how many additional dollars, not annual, but total dollars, need to be contributed to that repayment plan to fund each scenario. And it's in the range of about $180,000 to $260,000. That's one-time additional dollars that's generally happening in fiscal 25 and 26 that is needed above and beyond what you're already budgeting for debt service. So said another way, your modeling for debt goes a long way towards covering the debt service for this borrowing. We're short in the range of $200,000 that would need to be made available in 25 and 26, not each year, but some combination of those 2 years to make it cash flow. So while it's not totally fits within the debt affordability, it does come pretty close. There may be questions on that slide, but just so you know where we are in the process. You're going to hold a public hearing this evening, which is required regardless, and then you all will have the ability to consider a resolution, which, among other things, will include the winning bank lender. That will be your first of 2 approvals. So if you were to approve that resolution this evening, we would come back and do our second and final approval at your October 7th meeting. And in between there, we would have looked to get a local government commission approval on October 1st. That application has been submitted. It's non-binding. So we are working towards having everything to the local government commission that they would need to put you all on the agenda for October. If, for example, though, you said we're not ready to move forward, then we would just pull that application back and regroup. But if you did determine you wanted to move forward, if the resolution were adopted this evening, everything is set up for the LGC. We would need to come back for your final approval on October 7th, and we would be in a position to close by mid-October. Several things in the appendix that go back to those debt models, if anybody cares to look at it for each option. But I think, again, I think page 6 here is kind of the universe of data that maybe helps sort through what you all might want to do or questions you might have either before or after the public hearing.
Any questions?
Based on, we've seen those charts about the debt ratios and where we are. We have plenty of room in those on the 15 and 20 year terms
Yes,
here.
You do, and you've got room to do some things down the road as well, whatever those might be as you reassess capital needs going forward.
That
The
was my
debt
next
models
question.
that you have, I said you might need to supplement your revenues in 25 and 26, but at beginning again in 27, you start to have some cash freed up for what could be the next capital plan. So this doesn't take you out of the debt issuance cycle for extended period of time. A couple of years, you've got to supplement your budget, but you will be back in a position where you could consider additional debt if needed in just a couple of years.
And just for a little context for the room, our 10-year payback period is like 95%. Is that correct on our current debt?
I will double check that. That sounds right. It's very high. The county has a very rapid repayment of debt, yes.
So by us taking on this debt, it's not financially irresponsible based on the amount of time. That's what I was trying to
Not at
convey
all.
to the public.
No.
is-
I think this would be, I would call this a very standard-looking financing for these types of projects. I don't expect it would, certainly the banks that proposed didn't have any issue with it, and I would not expect that the local government commission would have any concerns about these options.
Any more questions? Hearing none. Thank you. At this time, we call for public comments. If there's anybody here to speak, please come forward and state your name and address for the public record. Now, this is, we will have, we will have public petitions. We will have public petitions.
Let me know when I need to come.
Yes, sir. I'll make sure we don't miss you, okay? But if we miss you, we're gonna hear from you anyway, okay? Okay. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, is there anybody here to speak
Check 1, 2.
in reference to our installment financing contract? Please come forward and state your name and address for the public record. Is there anybody here to speak? Okay.
Hi, Kathy Williams, 2208 Robin Drive, Trarboro. I would just like to encourage you at this public hearing piece to go ahead and do this financing. I know the shelter's up for vote tonight. we've waited long enough. And after listening to him explain the finances, it sounds like to me, county's planning able to do it, so we're tired of excuses and we're ready to see it move forward. Thank you.
Is there anybody else here to speak?
Nancy Sherry Walton, 1600 East Northern Boulevard, Tarboro, North Carolina. Also here on behalf of the animal shelter. I think you'll find there's a lot of avid supporters for that tonight, that we would like your consideration for that. I also would like to ask a question for financing.
Please.
With an election year coming up, if you wait on that, what kind of play you think that might have in it with things being so volatile? I don't know if that's even something to consider, but, you know, like I said, we waited long enough, and if there may be any type of volatility to what's coming before us, it may be very important to consider it now rather than later.
Is there anybody else to speak? Hearing none. At this time, I'd like to join the public hearing. Ms. Evans, your recommendations?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. My recommendation would be for the 15-year option with J.P. Morgan, the option 1, the non-callable. We're certainly open to hear if you all have any preference for a longer term or one with a prepayment option.
Well, that's my thoughts.
I
really.
agree.
You agree? You agree?
I agree.
So that means that if we paid this loan off, we would have to pay the entire loan,
We could not pay it off early at all.
unless we paid off the entire loan. It would be negotiable.
There is no
There's
option
no-
to
no,
pay
you
it
have
off
to
early.
continue
We'd have it for the 15 years.
Well, I don't even need to state my opinion. Period.
I think we're thinking the same way. Because should we come with a windfall and be able to pay it off, I would hate to think that we can't go ahead and get rid of that debt if we had the funds available.
I'm sorry. We
But-
still got $870,000 worth of projects that are not financed with this loan. So if we come to a windfall, we'll have some windfall to pay that off.
We do have other debt on our books currently that do have a callable or prepayment option.
Oh, okay.
But that's an important fact, as Mr. Cole said earlier, and that's something that would
Well,
lock
I-
us in to pay this for 15
I
years.
certainly was considering option 2. That was my thoughts, because, you know, we do go through when we have a drop in interest rates in terms of refinancing. So there's no refinancing on this loan. Well, it appears that I've heard from the majority of the board. Anyway, is there a motion to accept Mr. Evans' recommendation?
I move to accept.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, passes unanimous. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we ask for public petitions, and we ask for you to come forward and state your name and address for the public record. You can step forward now, sir, please do. Step forward now, sir.
I'm Billy Trevathan. I live on 247 South Shiloh Farm Road. If you don't know where that's at, if you leave here, go across the bridge into Princeville, get on 111, go down to the next intersection, that's Shiloh Farm Road. I've asked several questions. Of course, let me tell you this first. Some years ago, the county provided us with county water. Thank you. We'd like that new water, good water. Today, I want to ask you, I've asked several people about this, and they said, go to the county commissioner, so I'm here. I don't know whether it's been on your agenda, or whether you discussed it, or you hadn't even thought about it. But I know Princeville has 53 acres over there, they've been talking about development. Now, they got another 88 acres that they're talking about development, paid for by us taxpayers. I don't know what they're gonna do. But my point is, I own about 4.5 acres of land at the intersection of Shiloh Farm Road and 111. I would like to develop that into something commercial. My question is there gonna be any sewage out that way anytime soon? My lot does not perk. If it did, I'd already had some. Has there been any discussion at all, and y'all in the water and sewer business, even for Princeville, Have y'all discussed, or is it something I need to forget, or what?
I would like to see you forget it. You know, I'm gonna have let staff, I'm gonna let staff address that in terms of, Mr. Matthews or anybody that might, they know what our plans are. Ms. Evans, you got any response to that?
I was just gonna ask if he had been to the town of Princeville's meeting, because I've been told that they are now in the process of doing something with that acreage. And you may wanna go and talk with their new, the interim town manager, who could give you all of the, details of what they've discussed and how long they think it might be.
Well, I was thinking it was a county decision. We stuck
In
with
terms of the water and sewer, it's still probably more than likely would be ours.
Right.
In it-
But their developing would have to include
Right,
some
because-
type of water and sewer, that's why I was asking.
Right, and if the water and sewer was extended to that, it might be closer to you. I don't know what the plans are on that. Ms. Evans, can you address, you got any thoughts on
Well,
that?
I'll start, and then if Mr. Matthews knows anything in addition, I do know that the town of Princeville has funding that's been made available from a few different sources to develop infrastructure, at least on the 53-acre project. I'm not sure about on the 88 acres. They bid that out, and the bids came back a few months ago above what they have funding available. So what they've been working on is filling that funding gap. So their partners from the state and federal representatives are helping them with filling that funding gap. I do know there are plans to have water and sewer onto that project. Now, I don't know exactly where, it will be ours to serve. I don't know exactly how that's coming to those sites, and maybe Mike can speak to that. Do you know?
So I don't know about the 88 acres. The 53 acres does include water and sewer infrastructure. I'm assuming that the 88 acres will as well. Where Mr. Bateman's property is though, obviously we have water available all around it, so you're good there. The sewer, we do have sewer available at Southern Terrace, which is just south of your property. There are options available to get it there. As far as it requires some money on your part as far as hooking up to it by force main. But there is some possibilities. We'll just have to look at it and see what will be available.
Well, let me suggest you do this, Mr. Chase, come back and talk to Mr. Matthews and any of our planning staff. We would love to see you get it, okay? Anything that we can help you to do by application or process, I think we're on board with it. Just check with Mr. Matthews, and he might be able to give you some suggestions as to how we can do that.
Well, I would also like to say, there's over 40 residents out there in that area, within the 1 mile area. And we have a high water table. People have trouble with their septic tanks. So it would be good if the county could extend some sewage out that way, even now.
Well, I'm glad you brought the question to us, because we certainly, staff will take a look at, if you talk to staff, and if there's anything we can do, they will propose something for us.
All right, I thank you.
Thank you for coming. Is there anybody else to come forward? Please come forward and state your name and address for the public record.
James Harper, 1101 Panola Street, Tarboro. County Commissioners and County Manager Evans. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the county animal shelter and the lack of oversight by the sheriff and his staff. Did you know that the county's breaking the law at the shelter? According to a lieutenant at the sheriff's department, dogs have to be outside every day. I ask you this, is it a law in the state of North Carolina and you're aware of it, why aren't you doing something about it? Several weeks ago, I called Ms. Harris and made her aware that the county needed to do a better job of cutting the grass at the shelter. I offered to cut the grass, but wasn't allowed. I then went to speak to the county manager, was lucky enough to catch the assistant county manager, and asked why a contractor is allowed to have grass over a foot high in front of this building and at the shelter. I get it that we've had lots of rain, but that's no excuse. You need to terminate the contract and find someone who makes the county a priority. I have 2 dogs and 1 cat, and my biggest fear in life is that if something happens to me, they'll be locked up as the animals at the county shelter are. I've been lucky enough to grow up with pets and experience the joy they bring. Last month, I spoke about how important it is to me and others to make progress in the new shelter, and it seems that you are making progress. Not just saying that it will happen, but to actually make progress to breaking ground. By the way, how many of you all have been to the existing shelter in the last several months? 1? I drive by several times a week to see the dogs, if they're ever outside, and I take treats each month. I've offered to walk the dogs in the evenings because it's too hot for me during the day. Buy new leashes, but no answer from the sheriff. Thank you again for allowing me to voice my opinion, and I'll be here each month asking for better treatment of animals. Thanks for listening, and thank you again for letting me speak last month.
Yes, sir.
appreciate
Yes. We'll listen to you every month.
Reverend Roosevelt Higgs, Church Street, Rocky Mount, but my mailing address is Post Office Box 264, Speed, North Carolina. Telephone number is 252-907-8311. I'm here most of the night to probably get some updates on some things. The Martin Luther King celebration has not taken place for at least, I'm gonna say 2 or 3, maybe going to the 4th year. And I'm just wondering, is there any thought being given to try to rekindle that? I think it was needed then, and it's still needed now to serve as a refresher to our community, the sacrifice that Dr. King made. And I'd be willing to offer my services to help in any way to rekindle it. And also, I know that this month, the month of November is Native American Heritage Month. I think the county did a resolution or something last year. I hope that it would do it again this year. And also, I think the county, I want to ask the county to consider engaging is what is known as Juneteenth. There are some other organizations that gets out there and make this thing happen during the month of June. I think it would look good if Edgecombe County had its fingerprints on it as well. And let me do my check off here so I won't go over my, let me do that, King. Okay, and the next thing I have, I want to know is there's an update on the Charters of Freedom.
Mr. Chairman. So we've been we've been in contact with the 2 gentlemen that came. What we're waiting on now is they have a person that will come out and basically lay out the plan for it. As you know, we've selected the site, which will be to the front and right of our courthouse next door. And so we're waiting for their construction manager to come to draw out the plans for that.
Okay, what I have in my possession, Mr. Manager, a document that shows a short story of the making of the Constitution. I'd like to give you a copy of that. I have one more. Show that to the manager. And this is a picture of all the presidents, all of you that have been president of the United States from the beginning up to George Bush. I have 2 copies there as well. What do we consider educational information?
Okay.
And also, my next thing, I was here, I want to say back in last year in November or December, there was a resolution that the county commissioners signed off on in support of the bridge being named after the Honorable Walter Plymouth Jr. It just seemed like to me it's taken a long time to get that to come to pass, and I know it has been done on other occasions, like overnight. So I just wonder, does anyone know the status of what's really going on with that bridge name?
I'll have to follow up.
I don't recall that coming to this.
It came.
It came to this board,
Yeah, I was here.
It was, Town of Princeville had submitted a recommendation,
And we
and we passed a resolution that was sent back to the Town of Princeville, but I'll follow up.
well, so that's, well, we've done all that we can do. If it goes back to them, it's up to them in the state. If we've taken action on it, if we have taken action on it, that means that we approved it. So it's in Princeville hands in terms of, and I think it goes from there to the state.
Also, there was also some conversation that there's supposed to be a highway, I think, that was being considered for Clark Jenkins. You notice that's,
That has been submitted to NCDOT, but I'll have to follow up on what the.
and was that a county initiation or?
That was brought directly to the county.
So the county, okay,
So
okay.
you recall more than I do,
Yeah,
Reverend.
I keep up with stuff like this.
Okay.
So y'all have to deal with so much money.
We appreciate you reminding us,
Right,
okay?
Right, yeah. And
Mr.
also-
Higgs, I did want to tell you that the MLK, which has been going on, but they have a meeting scheduled for 5:30 on next Monday at the library to begin their preparations. The entrepreneurs have asked all organizations who are involved with the MLK celebration to be at that meeting at 5:30 at the library. Okay, I want to make sure you know that. And the Juneteenth is being handled, there's a Juneteenth committee, which is made up of county residents, Tarboro residents. We had a wonderful time this past Juneteenth. And so that committee will be getting together to plan the 2025 Juneteenth.
All right, thank you very much. And I also know that the county from time to time, y'all have named rooms, like I think this is the John Phelpson's room. I think the auditorium is named after Lorenzo Coleman. I just want to ask y'all, is there a policy that y'all use to govern yourselves with, or just a practice that y'all use when you do that?
It's the power of the board when it wants to do it. I'm not being just about when it comes to us in terms of, I think we probably have reserved that for ex-commissioners in terms of former commissioners that have served us well. It's not necessary just bringing us name from the public, and because we really don't like to turn people down, okay, in a public meeting. So it's something that you would discuss with the manager in terms of if that is something you have a thought of, okay.
You said just for county commissioners?
I think that's pretty much, I'm not gonna say yeah, cause you know different. I don't know, I can't name exactly.
Well, which room came from?
This name and Mr. Carmen, who was a former manager, that have been in public service, that have had extensive public service here in the county.
Okay, so you don't have a policy, just a practice that you have.
However you want to put that. Okay.
Okay, well, the two other things, this also marks the 25th year anniversary of Hurricane Floyd, and that was very devastating to the citizens of Edgecombe County. And I was hoping that something could be said or done to at least bring some awareness to it. Hoping we don't have to have a repeat of it. And I guess my next to the final thing, this may be to you, Mr. Manager. I know the county has I don't know whether it's a policy or whether it's a practice where some of the land that the county inherited through the buyout program, that y'all keep it mowed every so often?
It depends on where it is. Some is leased by other adjoining property owners or someone who has interest in leasing it. Some we do have mowed on a regular basis. Some, if it's in a place where it's not causing an issue, we've just allowed it to grow back up into its natural state.
But more specifically, I'm concerned about the property out there at Staten Estates, going towards Speed. That little subdivision there on the left is called Staten Estate. Mrs. Lucy Staten McCabe is the one that owned that property, and she's the one that made it possible for that subdivision to come to be. And I'd just like to see, when you turn off 122 and go what used to be the railroad track and make that little right around the curve there, there's a house that sits down there on your left. It was known as the Shepherd property, but the county owns the lot on both sides of that Shepherd property. And I think if the county could go in there and maybe address.
We'll take a look at it.
Right, right. And I'm very familiar with that. I moved out at State to State at age 17.
Thank you, Reverend Hicks.
10 years ago. And I'll keep up the good work. Spend all the money you can.
Thank you, Reverend Hicks. Is there anybody else to speak? Hold, Ms. Williams, we can't, no, you've been, we don't, come,
But
go
I came
ahead,
up during the public
go ahead.
hearing.
You did, come on.
I just wanted to address one thing that was said about the shelter.
Please.
It does come all the time with treats. We are very limited with staff. There's one person at the shelter that works there. I just get voluntold. So we're trying. Obviously, the new building is gonna be a huge help for us. So that's just what I wanted to tell you.
Do,
And also to encourage you to approve the resolution that Mr. Evans, I believe it's a resolution for the, leasing the helium balloons. And to ask you to consider that as well when that comes up.
do you have a volunteer group that comes?
So we have me, and then we have, we've had a couple of volunteers from the early college. One of them is actually Stan Lieberman's daughter. And then we have another one that's getting ready to turn 18, but she even volunteered all summer. We have people that offer, but then never show back up. I mean, once they realize they may have to clean a run or, you know, after walking one dog, they're tired. Well, you know, it's hot for the dogs, hot for us too. I think they're working on getting us some shade things out back, because there's no shade really. And now with the sun shifting, it's even harder, but you know, so you've got one staff member and 2 volunteers that are taking pictures, trying to do heartworm tests, giving rabies vaccines. It's just paperwork, because the state requires so much paperwork. I mean, it's a lot, and so we do try, but
Well,
we tell them they have to go to the sheriff's office to apply, because they get background checks and fingerprinted. We usually don't hear from them after that, unless they are young.
Well, we are hoping that the action that we're taking here will bring corrective
I'm
action.
very hopeful.
We are also hopeful, and we'll probably have to look at staffing also when it gets there. So there are other additional things that come with this, and we, whatever issues we got, we're in the process of correcting them.
And we do have some private donors that we know will help once everything starts. And we also have the money that we have raised from the public to help with beds and all that sort of stuff at the shelter. And we are not opposed to continuing to do that if we need to. Okay,
Thank you for your comment.
thank you.
Can I ask the manager a question?
Go ahead.
Now, I know that's under the leadership of the sheriff's office.
Yes.
But I had no idea there was just one employee either at the animal shelter.
I guess on a shift, but I'm
shift.
not certain of exactly what their staffing is like on a particular shift, but that is under the management of sheriff.
Okay.
Right, animal,
So I need to
animal,
ask him.
animal control is the sheriff's.
That's right.
We moved it from the health department. It used to be the health department. We moved it from the health department to the sheriff, so that there would be some enforcement there.
That's right.
I'll ask him.
Is there anybody else to speak? Hearing none,
Well, I'm not-
please come forward.
Good evening, County Commissioners and County Manager. My name is Brianna Stormbaker, and I'm coming to you today to talk about the Multicultural Arts Group Unity Festival, hosted by Crawl Rock Run Productions 2. We're holding it September 14th from 12 o'clock to noon, and it's going to feature live music, visual arts. We have food vendors that are coming in as well, and it's going to feature cultures from all around the world that are going to come to Bridger's house in order to raise awareness for the different types of cultures that are coming to Edgecombe County. Now, at 6 o'clock, we have a play called Southern Fried Love, which is going to hold its first debut. I am proud to announce that I am one of the actors, and so I wanted to leave some flyers with all of you in order to pass around. And I wanted to also invite all of you to come to the play. I would love to see y'all there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who would like to speak? Anybody else? If so, please come forward. Hearing none, I'd like to join the public meeting. We're moving into other business. Mr. Evans, budget announcements.
Yes, sir. You have budget amendments 1 through 17. Budget amendments 1 through 6 require your approval. The others are for your information. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have or provide any detail. You'll see there's some detailed description there at the top of each. but I recommend that you approve budget amendments numbers 1 through 6 as presented.
Is there a motion to approve budget amendment 1 through 6?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the budget amendments are approved. Next, B, Ms. Evans.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. For this particular item, we'll need for you to recess as the Board of Commissioners and convene as the Governing Board of Water and Sewer District 6.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, we're now sitting as the Governing Board of Water and Sewer District 6.
Yes, sir. And so I'll explain the action. As you'll recall, at your June 5th, 2023 regular scheduled meeting, you took action as the Water and Sewer District 6 Board to authorize by resolution a bond order in the amount of $2,619,000. In return, the district issue water and sewer system revenue bond anticipation notes in the amount of $2,194,000 and $425,000 respectively, with both bond anticipation notes set to mature November 20th, 2024, it is necessary for the district to issue both revenue bonds at this time. Before you are two resolutions for the issuance of revenue bonds 2024A in the amount of $2,194,000 and revenue bond 2024B in the amount of $425,000. Essentially what's happening here, you close, that initial action was closing on a construction loan. That project is substantially complete, so now you'll be closing on the permanent loan for that, which is USDA funded. I do recommend that you approve these resolutions separately. So the first recommendation is to approve Revenue Bond 2024A in the amount of $2,194,000.
Hear a motion?
So moved.
Second? Question? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, that revenue bond is approved. Next, Ms. Evans, was
The
what?
second is recommend that you approve Revenue Bond 2024B in the amount of $425,000.
So moved.
Second? Did I get a second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, that bond is also approved, Ms. Evans.
All right, thank you.
Next.
That's all the business for Water and Sewer District 6, Mr. Chairman. So ask that you reconvene as the Board of Commissioners.
Is there a motion to adjourn as the Governing Board of Water and Sewer District 6 and reconvene as the Board of Commissioners?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, we are now standing again as the Board of County Commissioners. Next.
Item C is regarding our hazard compensation policy. In 2020, the board approved a hazard compensation policy. The purpose of the policy is to recognize and compensate employees for circumstances that arise that require them to perform unusually hazardous duties or to perform normal duties in unusually hazardous conditions. In times of inclement weather and dangerous storms, we have closed our normal operations of the county. However, there are many staff members who still must perform their normal duties and others who are reassigned to a role in preparing for and responding to the event. While most staff members enjoy the benefit of remaining safely at home and receiving administrative leave, those who still must work receive no additional compensation, though I feel they deserve to. Therefore, I recommend that you approve an amendment to our hazard compensation policy that will allow me the opportunity to compensate staff in those situations. The details are described in the attached. And I do want to direct your attention to the next page behind, that's attachment 4. You'll see there in black is the existing hazard compensation policy language. What is being changed or added is in red. So you'll see, and I'll just read for clarity there, that second paragraph. Compensation may be given in the form of either a bonus not to exceed $1,000 per pay period for more than 2 pay periods. That's existing. That's what's already in place. A pay differential not to exceed 25% of the employee's base rate for no more than 2 pay periods. Compensatory leave not to exceed 1.5 times the employee's time worked during the hazardous conditions for no more than 2 pay periods. and added is, or pay at 1.5 times the employee's hourly pay rate for time worked during the hazardous conditions for a pay period not to exceed 1 week. I'll remind you that the only time we have implemented this, and really what brought this to our minds when you approved this was COVID. And, during shutdowns and mandatory mask mandates, we had to continue operations at some level. We did use some of the COVID funds we received to pay staff hazard bonus based on the policy that you approved. And so this is not a new policy, but recommending that you consider the amendment to add the language as I just described it. So I do recommend that you approve the amendment to the hazard compensation policy as presented.
Motion?
So moved.
Question?
I got a question.
Go ahead.
So when it says or, I mean, obviously it's an or, you get to, the manager chooses which one this
Yes.
is. And so I guess my question there is 2 pay periods for us. We pay monthly for these positions?
Yes. Our pay period is 1 month.
So if they choose the last option, they would only be paid 1.5 times for that 1 week period, not for the.
That's correct. And that was, that's intentional because, we have to also be budget conscious and we have to make sure it doesn't get away from us. I think if it's a situation, and what brought this to mind is we recently had to respond to what was Hurricane Debbie, then became Tropical Storm Debbie. I closed offices down on a Thursday, ended up being a whole day Thursday, and then 2 hours on Friday for the safety of staff traveling to and from work. But there were a number of staff members who still have to get out anyway, sheriffs, deputies, EMS staff, and then some other administrative staff are out there helping to respond, setting up shelters, working shelters, those kinds of things. I think that if it were a situation where it would be longer than that, we'd need to consider other options.
How is that decision made? Is the manager making that decision every time for the same type of employee? Is it changing every time? That's where I'm getting to the question there.
Typically, in that scenario that we're adding is typically the same employees that are having to work. Staff that don't have to come, they don't have to use sick leave or vacation time, they are using administrative leave. It's typically, like I said, EMS staff, sheriff staff.
What about setting up shelters? If we got to set up shelters, if we got to set
DSS and
emergency
health-
shelters?
DSS and health department staff, they work those shelters in rotation. Emergency services staff who are working and responding to the storm, planning, those kinds of things. So it's typically the same types of positions, if not necessarily the same.
And most time it's going to be something like a declared state of emergency,
That's correct.
pretty much.
I guess what I'm getting to is we could simplify this whole policy to just the statement in red.
To
Pay them at one hand.
We could, but what I would say, like, for example, with the, what we did, and hopefully we don't have to go through a global pandemic again, that was over multiple years, and we had other funds available that allowed us to do what we did there. So that type of thing won't be something unless we get back to a similar scenario.
That's what I'm saying. We had other funds to pay for it at that time. This, we can truly limit what our budget exposure is and then address it as we need to, if we just simplify it to what's in red.
Certainly open to the board. I would recommend as presented.
well, I think that
Because you're looking at 60 days of hazard pay. On the other, we're approving 60 days of hazard pay. The other one, we're looking at a week, and then we talk about what needs to happen for the appropriate response.
And I think
some
that,
people like comp time. You'll take comp time stays in that.
Well, that's why I asked the question, is the manager making the decision or is the employee making the decision?
it would be me making the decision as to what's offered. And we consider it as a tool. It depends on the event, the extent of it, the duration of it as to what tool I think is most appropriate.
I'd rather get paid and forget that comp time.
And the
Y'all never
circumstances
get time to
surrounding
take
what
comp
you
time.
make the decision.
Ma'am, I'm sorry.
I said, and the circumstances surrounding.
That's right.
Your decision. So
I got a motion. Did I get a motion? Did we get the motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead. We're talking about, okay, you were changing them. Go ahead. Did you want to make another motion or amend that motion? I'm satisfied with what the manager has recommended.
I just think that the policy is based off of a pandemic that we never had before. That's where this policy came from, correct?
That's what initiated, yes, sir.
And so now we don't necessarily need the same policy. I don't think we need the same policy based off of what happened historically or what happened in that small time frame. But we can still look at a simplified option that treats every employee fairly. That's what I'm also thinking too, is you're not making a decision, oh, I'm gonna give you comp time this time, or I'm gonna give you $1,000 bonus this time. It's a simple solution of, hey, you get paid time and a half for
Well, let me throw
Hazard
out
pay.
another scenario. We may have something not as broad as a pandemic, but it is very conceivable that we could have some public health, some communicable outbreak. I think Michelle is here, and I'm sure she's running her mind the names of different things, whether it's a TB that's involving multiple schools. So though it may not be as many staff members, it may be staff members over a long period of time, whereas that particular option may warrant itself.
All in favor of the motion, let it be known by voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
nay.
Motion passed 6-1. 5-1. Next.
Item D, you'll recall last month that you received comments submitted for public petition electronically from a Miss Debbie Swick. Her statement was regarding discussing the dangers of releasing helium balloons and encouraging the board to take action against such practice. She included information where some towns and a few counties have actually adopted ordinances to ban that practice. I would recommend as a first step for this board to consider to adopt the enclosed resolution. And as you see, the resolution is one that would discourage the release of helium balloons in Edgecombe County. It goes through and describes, the reasons why and the benefits of not practicing that particular thing.
The motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it passes. Next, Ms. Evans.
Next is regarding our a modification to our personnel policy to include credential incentives. Excuse me, for some positions, there are opportunities for staff members to gain additional knowledge and skills by attending training which offers a credential. Some training requires considerable time and effort on the part of the employee, but provide great returns on their ability to excel in their jobs, such that I believe additional compensation is warranted. I recommend that you approve the amendment to our personnel policy as presented, which provides a description of these opportunities as well as limitations as to how it may be implemented. What I have for you in your agenda packet is just an excerpt from our personnel policy, which, as you know, is a thick document. But I share with you section Article 9, which is under the heading of Employee Education. I'm recommending that you add item G under that section, which is titled Credential Incentives, which says employees in positions with opportunities for job-related certifications that enhance their ability to perform their duties may be eligible for a credential incentive pay increase. The certification must require measurable time and effort and involve a certain level of rigor. Pay increases will range from 1% to 5% per certification, depending on the complexity and relevance of the certification to the employee's role. Department heads are responsible for compiling a list of eligible certifications along with a recommended percentage increase, which must be approved by me. The cumulative pay increase of an employee can receive under this policy is capped at 10% in any given year. All credential incentives must adhere to the maximum allowable salary for the employee's pay grade. This policy is designed to encourage professional development while ensuring the salary adjustments remain fair and within budgetary constraints.
Let's ask for questions, discussion before I get a motion on that. Any question on that?
Yeah.
Go.
Is that that's an ongoing?
Yes, it's not a one-time bonus. It will be an increase to their salary.
Okay, so we just had a long discussion about how we couldn't increase the sheriff's salaries 5% because it was going to hit our budget. We're now saying that we can cap increases for everyone at 10%.
Oh, no. It's a relatively limited number of employees that will have access to this.
And it includes the sheriff department, right?
Yes.
Includes every,
Anybody in the sheriff's department can.
it includes the county employees.
I'm for this, but have we done the numbers of what this could cost? That's where I'm standing
I
here.
think it would be difficult to really map out exactly how many would get it. Because it's up to the employee to take the initiative to get the credential. It will depend on how long it takes them to get it, so it all would not fall, even if, let's just say in the next, if ended up in the next 5 years, 50 employees took advantage of this, all 50 wouldn't fall into one fiscal year, but it would be difficult to estimate. We've practiced this without really the details here in our personnel policy. For example, our building inspector, every time the building inspector gets another state certification, they used to get 2.5%, but when we've had to work harder to recruit and retain, we've increased that to 5% as an example. There's some other positions like environmental health specialists. We've got a few positions in utilities. EMS, the sheriff has a relatively new plan that he wants to implement. So we feel like that based on some lapsed salary, that it will be manageable within the budget.
And it states here some of the things like high school diploma, 2-year degree, 4-year degree graduate in terms of what they.
That's already in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is like for a sheriff, if they graduate from the FBI Academy, they would.
That's
Right,
yeah.
right.
That's right.
The words that concern me.
Which we're not gonna fund that many to go.
Right.
So that you got to go first, and
When it says involve a certain level of rigor,
Yes.
how do you determine what the rigor is?
Sure.
I mean, because if I already work a full-time job and I'm trying to go to school and get more credentialing, that's rigor.
Sure. I mean, obviously, it involves some judgment call. And that judgment call come from first a recommendation from the department head and then my final approval. And what we mean by that, there are a number of certificates and certifications that our employees can get, often. All of us have to take cybersecurity training once a year. That's not something that will be included in this. I mean, it takes some time. We're all required to do it. But that's not the kind of, we're talking about something that they're like oftentimes sitting in a class for multiple settings sometimes over periods of weeks. Many times there is some test involved, and sometimes there's a course test as well as a state test involved. I certainly understand your question. It will require some judgment call on my behalf and working with the department head.
And in everything that we do, we can't take the manager's judgment out of it. So it's nothing that we can sit here and do and take away the manager's judgment. Okay, if we got to take away his judgment, we can hire a robot. So I think anything that we do, that judgment is, and it's in the department heads. Judgment is there in terms of who they recommend. And when employees feel like they've been treated unfairly in the whole process, there's an appeals process in terms of trying to handle that. So I think we need to, and I agree with you, rigor,
Some of us
most
learn
anything
quickly.
that a full-time employee does to go to school after they get off work is hard. It's difficult. It's difficult. So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Question?
I got
Go
one
ahead.
final question.
Go ahead.
And I'm going to vote yes, but may I recommend we have our personnel committee that we review what is being approved by the department heads? So when the manager gets the credentials, we could review what those credentials are and see kind of how those pays are going to be done? Would that help? I mean, I've seen what the sheriff has proposed.
I think that puts us in the position of employee oversight that I don't think we need to be in. I think that we set policy, but I don't think we need to be if we get in the position of recommending, we can, this money, policy, and this budget is ours, not the employees. Now, we might think different, but I don't think that's our role. Now, anybody else here speak different?
I will agree with Mr. Wiggins on that.
Mhm.
Then maybe I need to clarify what the Personnel Committee is.
Well, I think the Personnel Committee is really this policy. You can look at this policy and recommend that we change it. That's what I think. Policy is ours. We can make a motion, don't do none of this. We need to look at the policy.
And it's not our responsibility to get involved in the day-to-day operation.
Not,
That's
and
exactly
that
what
becomes a
would be.
day-to-day operation.
And if I could, just to share, and this was from action that you all as a board took, however many years ago it was that you created the Personnel Committee. You created the Personnel Committee to, number one, to do the annual, or however often as you like, it's typically annually, evaluations of myself and Mr. Peters as being the two positions that you hire.
That we hire.
That's right. And the other was any personnel action that originates with me and the employee wants to file an appeal or a grievance, since it originated me, it has nowhere else to go, then those appeals can go to the Personnel Committee. Now,
But even with coming to the Personnel Committee, it's got to go back to you, because the board does not have an authority to override personnel decisions, okay? They can. You're exactly right. Now, if I'm saying something different here, please.
That's how we've done it. I'd have to look at it.
That's how we have done it. We still but you know, it doesn't, you know, politically, if we are looking at an appeal, the board, you know, you certainly the manager needs to give that some consideration. It make good sense for him to, okay, with 3 members of the board sitting there, but it's still his or her decision, but in this case, it's his decision. As I would understand it, okay? Now, it could be a different understanding on it. Now, where are we? With the motion?
yes.
We had a motion and second.
All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none is approved. Next, Ms. Evans.
Item F is regarding an offer to purchase of our property in North Main Street. 10-day upset bid notice was published regarding the offer accepted from Heichel Properties LLC to purchase property the county owns at 3003 North Main Street, Tarboro. No other offers were received within the time provided by law. Therefore, I recommend that you approve the attached resolution authorizing the sale of 3003 North Main Street for $350,000, which is subject to Heichel Properties receiving zoning approval within 90 days of this resolution.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. There's a house over there, I can try to see.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, so ordered. Next.
Item G is regarding changes to Health Department positions. Ms. Etheridge, our Health Director, is recommending changes to the descriptions of 3 positions in her department. These changes will restructure the positions to better suit the needs in the department. The position and changes are, first, a Public Information Assistant. This is adding a new position to the compensation plan. A currently budgeted Administrative Support Specialist in the Health Department will be repurposed to the new position, which is at the same grade. Secondly is a Public Health Nurse 3 for CAP and CMAR programs. This is a revised description of the position, which will remain at the same grade. And third is Public Health Nurse 3 for Women's Health. This is a revised description of the position, which will remain at the same grade. I recommend that you first approve the revised positions as presented. Secondly, to approve the revised compensation plan.
The first motion, state it again, Ms. Evans.
The first motion will be to approve the revised position descriptions as presented.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved. The next,
Next action will be to approve the revised compensation plan, which is adding the public information assistant as a grade 2.
motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved, Ms. Evans. Next.
Item H, as you may recall, in May of this year, you approved a resolution and funding offer package from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, Division of Water Infrastructure, or DWI, in the amount of $13,774,000 to fund Kingsborough Industrial Park Phase 2 Sewer Extension Project. However, due to State Law 2024-1, the Division of Water Infrastructure has reduced their administration fee from 3% to 1.5%, resulting in additional project grant funding in the amount of $213,000. This will bring the total amount of grant funding for this project to $13,987,000. I recommend that you approve the enclosed resolution and funding offer documents as presented.
Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved.
Item I is regarding Kingsborough infrastructure as well. Back in March of this year, you approved a grant project ordinance for the Kingsborough Industrial Park Phase 2 sewer extension in the amount of $13,774,000, which was state awarded funding from the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. As I just mentioned, DWI has reduced their administration fees from 3% to 1.5%, therefore increasing the grant fund available by $213,000. Also, at the conclusion of the Kingsborough Industrial Park Phase 1 project, there were remaining Golden Leaf grant funds in the amount of $3,476,575.12. At your January 2024 meeting, you approved a revised grantee agreement with Golden Leaf, which allowed the reallocation of those remaining funds from the Kingsborough Phase 1 project to the Phase 2 project. These funds will be used to construct the waterline extension portion of the Phase 2 project, which is projected to cost $2,197,200. The remaining Golden Leaf funds will then be used to complete the sewer extension project, which is projected to cost $15,266,375.12. I recommend that you approve the enclosed grant agreement as presented.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved. Next.
Item J is regarding our opioid settlement fund plan revision. As you know, to receive the opioid settlement funds, we had to have a plan as to how those funds would be utilized. Our existing authorization outlines the expenditure of funds across 3 key strategies, including recovery support services, naloxone distribution, and syringe service programs. Well, the amendment here is proposed to better align our strategies with the dynamic needs of our community and evolving best practices. So first, regarding strategy renaming, the Recovery Support Services has been renamed to Post-Overdose Response Teams to better reflect the activities conducted by our community paramedic program. Under language revision for providers, the wording has been edited to more accurately represent providers involved with naloxone distribution, post-overdose response, and syringe service program strategies. For the introduction of a new strategy, a 4th strategy, which is the evidence-based addiction treatment, has been added. This strategy will allow the county to accept requests for proposals from qualified providers in the area to stipend office-based medication-assisted treatment, or MAT care, addressing financial barriers to substance use care and recovery. And finally, a 5th strategy, collaborative strategy planning, has been added also. This involves funding community forums and workshops that gather input from diverse individuals, including those affected by opioid use, to create programs tailored to specific community needs. These programs aim to open the door for expansion of the strategy list in the future as outlined in Exhibit B and further detailed in Exhibit C. I recommend that you approve the updated MOA enabling the authorization of increased funding due to the receipt of additional settlement funds. The total amount allocated across these strategies was $1,435,903.
Motion. Second.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye. All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved. Next.
Item K, as you know, this is our second year of funding for the programs we're offering in partnership with Edgecombe Community College. These programs are under our umbrella of initiatives called Edgecombe Works and are aimed at providing resources that will increase the employability skills of our citizens as well as provide training opportunities for our staff, with the ultimate goal of getting off the list, in particular our list of being on the list of having a high unemployment rate. These programs were a success last fiscal year, and with what we learned together with Edgecombe Community College, we're able to make adjustments for even greater success this year. To better formalize our partnership with the Community College for Edgecombe Works, we propose entering into the attached Memorandum of Understanding. I recommend that you approve the MOU as presented.
Any questions before I ask for a motion? If not, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Any questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved.
I'm gonna do that second. Who was the second on that?
I didn't hear it.
It was me then. Put me down. Okay.
Because it was a college, I didn't think I needed.
That sounds good. Okay.
Next item is regarding the Complete Access to Broadband Program, or CAB. I mentioned, I think, last month's meeting, I informed you that Brightspeed has been awarded the Complete Access to Broadband grant funds. The total project is $2,676,958, of which the provider will invest $803,087.40. The North Carolina Department of Information Technology Office will invest $936,935.30, and the county will invest the same amount. This project will serve 1,420 locations. We have the map in your booklet there, but you can also see it there on the screen. As you know, we are using ARPA-enabled funds to meet our match requirement. We will provide those funds for holding by NCDIT, who will oversee the construction of the project and administer payment to the company per the MOU. I recommend that you approve the attached CAB MOU as presented, as well as I would recommend that same recommendation to approve the transfer of funds from our American Rescue Plan revenues to our, what is that line? Infrastructure line of $1 million. You know, we had $1 million reserved. We'll be using $936,953.
You got two motions there.
Yes, sir.
Question. Brightleaf has not done good. Brightspeed has not done good. I've been out of use of my land phone for 3 weeks. And they still haven't fixed it. And they giving me the runaround.
Okay.
And I'm ready to change.
Everybody beside the church has had the same problem. That whole community on that road beside the church has been without service.
And that's not good at all for getting a contract.
I understand. I certainly am not going to try to take up for Brightspeed. I know that they have been making some investments to upgrade their infrastructure, not just in what's been funded by these grants, but also in areas where they already have service. I certainly will pass that along to the contacts that we have.
Please do, because I think I'm ready to change. I mean, you get transferred, you get I mean, you get messed over.
If you go into Optimum, you ain't gonna get much better service, sorry to tell you.
We have, give me the motion, first motion, Mr. Evans.
So the motion would be to approve the memorandum of understanding as presented.
So moved.
Chair seconds. Question, you had a question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
My concern here, I don't know who served on the committee that worked with the CAB and the state, but we've talked about serving areas that would not get served otherwise, and those areas are not listed in this CAB grant. And this is our funding that we can control what we invest in, and I understand that there has to make economic sense, but there was not input received from the board, from my understanding, on what we wanted to invest in.
So last month's meeting, I don't have all three maps tonight, but last month's meeting, I showed you
An overlay.
Brightspeed's original Great Grant program, which is primarily south of Tarboro, somewhat west towards Rocky Mount, but in areas not counted here, because they cannot use these funds in areas that's already covered by Great Grant funds. Then Infinity Link has received the second Great Grant from the state. Theirs is primarily north of Tarboro and somewhat east towards Speed, maybe not right over Speed, but somewhat in that direction. So really what this is here with the CAB program is filling in some of those areas in between.
Now, the grant is specific to them to do those areas.
That's correct.
And those are areas that we don't have it in.
That's correct. They cannot spend that money to go, in front of homes that already have it.
But technically, but they're using data that's 8 years old, so there's a problem in that, and they've acknowledged that. My problem here is that we've set aside $1 million as a board, say we want to serve the most underserved communities, and the board was not asked what communities we wanted to serve.
Well, sometime back, we've had some discussion with the board, and I asked that the board have any priorities. There was some discussion of the board, and what I took from the board was, let's see what proposals come, and let's see what's funded. This one in particular, and who was on the committee from the staff was myself and Ms. Bess. The state had 3 or 4 people from NCDIT office, and they're experts on these things. By far, and I'll have to pull up the other proposals, I think there are 3 other proposals. Brightspeed was proposing to cover almost about double of what the other ones were proposing, at least double of what the other ones were proposing. So that was one of the reasons why it scored so high, was because of the number of households that they were proposing to cover. Now, I will say, this $1 million we can only spend once. I think we have, in my opinion, I feel like we've kind of come down this path, a good ways. And I think what we'll need to see is, and what we can, working with these 2 companies to show you, is an overlay of all 3. And I think what you'll see is that there will still be some dead spots that we expected. We knew that it could not cover the whole county. Be my recommendation to approve the MOU, but certainly, it's the board's decision.
I still see all these green dots over here in the southern part of the county. So the northern part is still getting the short end of the stick.
That's in that Infinity Link project. Their dots were north of Tarboro primarily.
This is my primary hesitation and why I brought it up. We set aside $1 million to fund areas that no other company is going to make economic sense for them to fund. The reason why Brightspeed got this is because they're already in those areas and are just extending the line that's there, which I understand makes economic sense, but that's not why we set aside $1 million. We're not going to get another ARPA funding, I don't think, where we have $1 million to fund county areas in our county that will never have internet service, because it will probably never make economic sense for a company to fund them.
I certainly understand the point.
I think the question though is what could we get a company using our million to do what you were saying?
I don't know. That's why I'm kind of frustrated that we weren't allowed to have the question answered. I mean, I get there's two sides to that story, but when do you have $1 million that's given to you to say, here, you spend it on internet?
I think if we were to draw a circle, a square, anywhere on that map where we feel like will probably be one of the last frontiers, if you will, we certainly could spend that $1 million. Number one, I don't know if we'd get a company to do it. If we could, we'd serve far fewer people with that $1 million. I will say that this CAB program is not the last of the broadband funds that's coming down the pipeline. There's another program that the name of it escapes me at the moment, that we're hoping that with that, maybe we can fill in some of these gaps. I think that, the state is interested in trying to fill in gaps for every county out there. It's not going to happen in one project or three. But I think with the number of people that this program will be able to serve, 1,420 is significant.
I'm not discounting that. I'm not discounting that at all. I'm just saying why we set that money aside is to serve the people that will be the last to be served.
And personally, that would be me. 'Cause I won't be served.
Well,
Where I am right now with this.
And I
this
think
plan.
we're all supportive of where we think that money should be. But I also think that money is to also to be used when we get grant money that can still serve people that are still not being served. There could be some areas that we probably would not be able to get to because it's just not financially feasible for a company to go in there and do it. And those are some of the areas that I think we're talking about because of the. So I'm supportive. I think we've got a motion on the floor, and it has been moved and seconded. So I'm going to ask all in favor of the motion as presented, please let it be known by the voting sign aye. Aye. All opposed? So right now, it appears it is not approved. Let me ask you this question, Mr. Evans. Where can Brightspeed move forward without this money?
They won't move forward without it, no, not with this project.
So what we have done is eliminated the CAB fund, is that correct?
We have not.
That particular funding, that particular grant.
We would have to go through the process again. And I think Jason may be doing this. Jason, do you have those maps, the other two projects, maybe from last month's meeting? I should have pulled it. I should have had those pulled up before.
There's never gonna be a perfect situation reaching in certain areas.
And I understand because there are very few houses in my area. And it's all based on the houses.
And it's a grant for, this CAB program gives us a grant of how many million?
We got 1 million.
We've got 1 million that we are leveraging.
Oh, it's a good help.
So this map that you see, this is the first, make sure I'm correct. This is the first great grant that was funded to Brightspeed. And you'll see that it's total of over 4,000 houses that it will pass by. And first of all, I want to qualify that people still have the choice to sign up or not. But it will pass by a little over 4,000 homes. You'll see it's coming out of Tarboro, southern end of the county, and some coming out of Rocky Mount eastward. A little bit up there, way in the northern part of the county, coming out of Whitaker's. Now, Jason, if you'll pull up the next map, which is Infinity Link. Hopefully you have that.
I'm not seeing their signs anywhere.
Who Brightspeed?
Infinity.
They're really just getting started. They just got their construction plans
Oh, okay.
complete.
They're in Tarboro.
Yeah.
They're down Main Street and they're hitting all streets now.
I heard they were on Panola Street.
Yeah.
I just really think we're missing an opportunity. We need to take advantage
So-
of the grant funds.
Yes.
We're not missing the grant. The grant's still there. We can still participate in the grant.
He just said we had to reapply.
I had to reapply. I mean, we still have the ability to participate in the grant. We just have to go through the process again and have them rebid based on what we tell them to.
This is Infinity
Using
Link's
those funds.
great grant
And you
area.
said they're coming out the northern part.
Everything in green is in their proposed area. You see, they display it differently here. Instead of dots, they show in the shaded green areas. But you'll see theirs is, north of Tarboro and somewhat east side of the county.
Okay, so we just gotta look for Infinity coming out that way.
And then if you, again, Jason, pull up that last map there of Brightspeed. Yep, that top one, the cab map, yep. Which is the one you saw a while ago.
As long as somebody's coming.
So you'll see,
just don't wanna be
us,
left
it'll,
out.
we'll have to merge these maps, but you'll see it's filling in some spaces from those first two projects.
Well, I hate
Well,
to
let me ask this, Ms.
not
Evans.
help the other.
Let me ask this, Ms. Evans, an action is just taken, what just happened with the grants?
Well, we'll have to let the board know, we'll have to let state DIT know that you did not want to proceed with Brightspeed's project. Honestly, I'm not sure. My guess is, I don't know if they'll have to rebid this, go to second on the list. I'm not sure. I'll have to find out.
Can I ask this, can I ask for a motion for reconsideration and we table it
Until you find out.
until Ms. Evans get us information in terms of how we might need to proceed with what Mr. Thorne is talking about? Would those that oppose consider that?
I would, because I hate to think that we're not helping somebody else just because I don't get it.
What would be my procedure there,
becomes
Mr.
Well,
President?
if
What would
it's
be-
gonna be reconsidered, the motion would need to be made by someone of the prevailing vote, so either Mr. Thorne, Ms. Powell.
We
Ms.
had four
Harrison.
people that opposed. Would any of you be?
So
with
part of
me?
that's gonna be combining those maps and we can check to see if.
I'm saying we will table the action and raise those questions that you're talking about. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate. I mean, I think my frustration here is that we've had people that have expressed a lot of concern about particular areas of the county, and they were never asked.
And I'm not necessarily disagreeing with my concern. Also, we had people that we could benefit from that grant that were on the table, that we didn't need to lose that grant money and not also give them that opportunity. And I agree with you, okay, and I agree with you. I just don't want our action.
I'll motion that we table it to the next meeting.
No,
pending more
I
decision.
think we have to reconsider the action that had been taken. The motion needs to be reconsidered.
I think that's fine, reconsider and table it to the next meeting.
Okay,
Reconsider and table?
I think
Okay.
And I'll
A
second.
motion that we reconsider and table to the next meeting.
And I'll second that.
All in favor, let it be known by the vote sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, those actions are tabled. Okay. Next, and get those, and Mr. Strawn, let me suggest that you got the most questions about that in terms of the kinds of things that we need to be addressing. If we can make that happen with that particular grant, okay? Okay.
What I will bring back is I will bring you all copies of all of the proposals we receive. You're welcome to look at those. I'll find out if you choose not to go with Brightspeed, what the process will be and what our timeline is for making a decision.
It seems that, to me, just the conversation is that Brightspeed got the grant money for that particular area. So that's Brightspeed got the grant. So that they're not gonna change. It's a matter of us having to put a portion of the money, which is the million. Okay.
Right, this project that was vetted thoroughly by the state was the one recommended by the state team. It is contingent upon this insertion of funds from the county. So the county, if you do not choose to invest these funds, that project won't move forward. I don't know what the implication, that's what I will find out.
Well, also in that conversation, find out, maybe for the area that we're talking about, if there is, we might be talking about other county funding to make all of this happen, okay?
Could I, and I don't want
Go
to
ahead.
belabor this more than I have to, but I just want to make sure I'm clear, because I thought I was before.
Well, I'm not clear, okay? You might be clearer than I am, okay?
Jason, will you pull back up either of those maps, maybe the Brightspeed cap
I
grant?
think what would help us too is so we get a better Infinity Link map, because that doesn't show what house, I mean, I think there's areas that we want to cover with our $1 million.
Well, and I guess that leads to my
expressed.
question. I had asked in previous meetings before, did you all as a board have designated areas? And I know there's a need for, a need all over the county, but was there any particular area that was a priority? And there was not from the board. So is there any particular area that the board wants to say, this is an area that we want to target?
I would like to see an overlay of all the areas, regardless of who has them at the
Okay.
next meeting or before then, so we can see what we're doing, instead of talking about different people covering different things.
Yeah.
Because we may get the best bang for our buck with these exactly as they are.
Okay.
We may not, I don't know, but with everything on one map,
We'll do that.
with different colors or whatever you need to do.
Sure.
Yeah, this is a
I
thing
think-
that's gonna be mandated by the federal government
Oh,
eventually, it's gonna be
and
everywhere.
but I guess we do not need to lose that grant
No.
money in terms of the service to the people that are getting registered. And
No.
if that needs to, but we need to also be figuring out how can we get,
Fix the other people.
how can we get the other service?
Yeah, I
But
don't be
you-
selfish.
you still might be confused, Mr. Evans, but,
No, that's okay.
I don't know how to.
I know what my marching orders are.
Okay.
Yes, sir, no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Okay.
No problem.
Moving on.
Item M is regarding purchase agreement for the former incubator building. You previously approved the purchase of a 40,000 square foot Edgecombe Business Incubator Building from Rocky Mount Edgecombe Community Development Corporation. As you know, we're purchasing this building with state appropriated grant funds to be used for workforce readiness training. It will also be used as a temporary training center for Natron Energy. To more clearly set forth the terms of the purchase of this facility from Rocky Mount Edgecombe CDC, Mr. Peters prepared the attached agreement of purchase and sale. I recommend that you approve the agreement as presented.
Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. it is-
Nay, I'm opposed.
You said nay?
Yes.
Motion passed 5-1. Go ahead.
Item N, consideration of home and community care block grant funding. The Home and Community Care Block Grant Advisory Council voted to approve and forward a recommendation to the Board of Commissioners to reallocate grant contingency funds. These funds will now be used to support the provision of information and options counseling with Edgecombe County by the Upper Coastal Plains Council of Governments Area Agency on Aging. The Area Agency on Aging expects to serve approximately 100 clients through this service. To move forward with this initiative, new grant forms, including the Edgecombe County Funding Plan and the HCCBG agreement for the provision of county-based aging services, has been prepared and recommended for your approval.
Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none is approved. Next.
Item O is regarding Sheriff's Highway Safety Program. This was tabled at your last month's meeting. We got some clarification on that. Sheriff received 2 grant awards from the Governor's Highway Safety Program to continue to designate a full-time deputy who addresses traffic collisions, speeding complaints, and other issues related to traffic safety and education. You approved the acceptance of these awards at your May 6th meeting. However, the amounts listed in the documents presented were incorrect. One is for an additional position which totals $131,745. $111,983 is the federal share, $19,762 is the county share. The other is for a fourth-year continuation of the existing position, which totals $75,000, of which $18,811 is the federal share, $56,434 is the local share. These grants are intended to provide the related startup costs, including vehicle, equipment, et cetera, and to create these positions. The positions are then to be absorbed over a 4-year period as follows. The match and eventual total funding for these positions will be drawn from the sheriff's already approved salary line. You can see that the match federal share goes from 85% down to 25% in year 4. I recommend that you approve the resolutions as presented.
Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Questions?
I got just one question. So this is 4 years and then we lose those positions, or do they stay?
They'll be absorbed in the sheriff's budget.
They'll be absorbed in the sheriff's department. So the funding is just one, so we'll fund these officers at that level. Will they adjust the salary line after that to compensate for that?
They'll have to request that in light of all of the other positions that they're
Well,
asking to budget.
usually not new grants come. These grants something different might come after that.
Yeah.
In terms of, for those positions. That's what usually has happened.
But the 56,434 will come from sheriff's
Salary line.
salaries.
Yes, sir.
But after that, we'd fund those full positions at that total.
Yes.
Any other questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved. Appointments, Tourism Development Authority. Jay Cutler is recommended for the Tourism Board. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Question? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, they are appointed. After list and releases for review and remove. Any questions from the board? If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye. All opposed? Hearing none, they are approved. Contract for review and approval. Anything to be brought to the board's attention, Mr. Evans?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. The first, let me get this right. So the first 4, and you can see the descriptions there. Happy to answer any question that you have. I recommend that you approve those separately. They are for RL Architecture, PLLC, a change order, TA Loving, change order number 6.
Read them one by one there.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Number 1 is,
RL Architecture, this is the architect who's designed the animal shelter. This is to add surveying that parcel, subdividing that parcel.
a motion?
So moved. So moved. No second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, is approved. Next.
Second is TA Loving, change order number 6. This is in Water Sewer District number 6.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved. Next.
Third is contract with the Wooten Company Engineering Services. This is for Kingsborough Waterline Extension. This will be paid for with those grant funds we talked about earlier.
Motion?
So moved.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Next.
Fourth is contract with Smith Gardner Incorporated. This contract is for environmental compliance services at the landfill. These funds are already budgeted in solid waste.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, it is approved.
The next is for A.R. Cheshin. This is the low bidder for the construction of the new animal shelter. This contract will be contingent upon LGC approval of the financing.
So moved. Well, I raised the issue about rebidding this job because we came in way over on everything. And, you know, I know we do what we always done, and that is sit it out and something everybody can bid on it, but you had Chesson and who else could bid on it?
You have the names of those companies?
How many of them were local?
I think there was 3 local. We did have.
Local as in
Within
Chesson's,
adjoining county.
Chesson's in Greenville. Right.
So I know that we had two local contractors in Edgecombe County that reached out to us that talked about it, but didn't submit any. Outside of that, that's the only two that I'm aware of that were Edgecombe County based.
Well, all I'm saying is this, be it this project or any other project, sometimes we need to look a little further than just putting an ad in the paper and asking for bids. I have one company that I know is interested in bidding in this, and I called Mr. Peters and asked him, was everything okay with it? He said rebidding it was okay, but how much time will it take to rebid it?
We'd have to repost it in the multiple places that we posted it. We have to give them probably the same amount of time we did before, which was about 30 days. Is that what we did?
The last one, well, I think was right around 20 days.
Yeah, so, you know, give or take 20 to 30 days. We'll have to review those. It will push out our timeline. We can't go to the LGC without the bids.
Right. Okay, well.
Let me correct. We can't go to the LGC in October. Well, we can't go to the LGC without the bids, period. We have to have the bids in hand. This is the biggest ticket. So if we rebid this, this means we will have to push back going to the local government commission, is what I meant.
Okay, well, I'll just say what I said for the future. Next time we do something, I'd like to see us make sure, other than just posting an ad, that we get some local people in on it, and I believe we could save some money.
But you said the local that you knew, they still didn't put a bid in, right?
That's correct.
They just asked about it.
That's correct.
That was part of my concern, was
Right.
the architect said it was gonna cost $4 million and it's coming in at $5 million.
About two.
Well, this bid's for 4.9, there's some contingency in there, right?
No, there's no contingency.
The additional is the cost of the architect, the $307,000 contract for the
So
architect.
the,
And that includes construction management.
so the bid came in $925,000 more than what the architect told us. And so we paid the architect $300,000 to be $900,000 off.
You never know what you're gonna get until you bid it. You just really don't. I mean,
Oh,
there
we need to subtract
there
that.
are a lot of factors involved in that. I will say that we followed the same process that we do for large projects. That is, we're required to, by our procurement policy, is we post it in the local paper, which was the Telegram. We posted it on our website. We also posted it on the state procurement system. It's called IPS, and folks who are interested can, from all over the state, really anywhere, can look on that. And then I think it was probably sent to, I don't know how many,
I'm not sure. I do know we had a bidder come from Charlotte.
that the architect had, a list of companies that the architect had, so.
I will say too, so our architect is subcontracted with Stocks Engineering out of Nashville. They reached out to local contractors as well to talk to them. That's how we ended up with, I think, I keep saying local, but I mean in surrounding counties. We ended up with several that had bid packages.
Is there a motion to approve manager's recommendation? You got it, made.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
question, any additional questions? All in favor, let it be known by voting sign aye. Aye. All opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Motion passed 4-2.
And the last one is change order number 1 for Crowder Gulf. This is for the tornado-related storm debris removal. This will take the total contract to $302,000. And again, this is grant funded from state appropriation. I do suggest that Commissioner Powell excuse herself from voting on this because this contract does involve her property.
Motion to excuse, Ms. Powell.
So moved. Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, Ms. Powell is excused. Motion to approve the
So
contract.
moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none, it is approved. Next, Mr. Evans.
So I do recommend that you approve change order number 1 for the Crowder Gulf contract. Change orders in the amount of $26,500 as presented.
Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none, it is approved. Moving on.
Under department reports, I will call up Ms. Barfield, who will give an overview of her monthly financial summary and answer any questions that you have.
Good evening, Commissioners. I don't have anything significant to draw to your attention tonight with the reports. We're continuing to close out fiscal year '24. Our auditors will be back on site next week for their third and final time, September 11th and September 12th. We're hopeful to do a final close sometime at the end of September, very early October. I'll take any questions.
Any questions? Thank you. Any questions from the board on water, sewer, or solid waste? If not, moving to the manager's report. Moving on, Mr. Evans.
You have under my report my major events and updates, workforce development indicators, and C, which is the monthly TDA financial report. Item D is regarding funding recommendation for school resource officers. So you'll recall that during our budget session, we discussed funding for school resource officers. You heard from the superintendent about his concern for safety of our students during our joint board meeting with the school board some months ago. Sheriff Atkinson requested funding for 6 additional positions to provide additional SRO coverage. You did, as a board, expressed interest in providing additional funding, but wanted to wait to see if any additional state funding may come available. Currently, I want to describe, as the best I understand it, the current school resource officer coverage. Currently, there is one SRO assigned to each of the 3 high schools, that being Southwest, Tarboro High, and North Edgecombe. Martin Millennium, which is K-8, has one assigned to Martin Millennium. And then you have other schools that are sharing a school resource officer. Coker-Wimberley Elementary and Phillips Middle share one. Carver Elementary and South Edgecombe Middle share one. Bullock Elementary and West Edgecombe Middle share one. Baskerville Elementary and Parker Middle and Rocky Mount share one, and now D.S. Johnson Elementary and Fairview Elementary, which are side by side, they share one. I joined Superintendent Bryan and Sheriff Atkinson and some of their staff members last week to discuss this. We learned that the school system is applying for funding for 2 additional, the existing 6 that they have, and 2 additional positions. They seem confident to get those funds, but won't know until later in the fall. I would recommend that the board considers moving forward with providing some additional funding to the sheriff's office to cover additional deputies to be assigned to school resource officers. Estimated cost for 4 additional positions, that will be the salaries and all of the associated costs, comes up to a total of about $300,000. This will give both the sheriff and the school system better opportunity to cover these schools better, where hopefully they can have as close as possible with these additional funds from the state, single resource officer assigned to each of the schools, and less sharing as there is now. And that would be my recommendation. If the board is open to consider that, we will prepare a budget amendment to bring back for your approval.
I would propose that you bring the budget amendment back. Any objections?
I have a question. Yes.
Hearing none, bring it back.
Okay.
Go right ahead, Scooter.
That's fine. Just for clarity. Right now, he's trying to eliminate those shared ones, right?
As much as possible.
So you'll still have just one of those high schools. If something should happen, this is just hypothetical. If something should happen at one of the high schools, what do? Calls for backup?
Yes, ma'am.
Because when you're talking high school students, you're talking about real stuff. Okay, I was just wondering.
Now, one thing I did learn from the sheriff on this last week is, obviously funding is one issue, so that they can get the deputies available. I think maybe 3 of those are full-time positions. The rest are part-time. These are retirees who are coming back working part-time. It is an incredible amount of juggling, if you will, that they have to, because depending on what's going on at a school on a particular day, if somebody's out that day, how they reassign. And Sheriff, shared with me that it's not just having a deputy, but having the right deputy available is really important. So I think the overall goal is, I think there will continue to be that shifting as needs shift, but the goal is to provide as much as possible, as I understand it, at least where schools are not sharing, or sharing as little as possible, and in some cases, maybe doubling up where they can. I think that will be a fluid, it's always a fluid thing. I think it will continue to be a fluid thing.
That 300,000 is on top of the additional state
Yeah.
funds? It's not reimbursing us if they
No.
get those state funds?
That's correct.
Move it on, Ms. Evans.
Okay, so we'll bring that back for you then. Next, you have, you'll recall that Northeast Carolina Preparatory School, they came and had a conversation with the Budget Committee, and I believe to the full board at your budget work session. They talked about some of their capital needs as their student numbers grow. They did submit a proposal under our Getting Off the List discretionary funding request for proposals. As the committee scored those proposals, their proposal was not one that came up in the top 9 that you agreed to fund. They've since sent back for your consideration. You'll see a letter enclosed. They would like for the board to consider, outside of that funding mechanism, $25,000 to assist in some capital projects that they have coming. They have 3 projects as described in the letter. They're beginning construction on a cafeteria as well as locker rooms for the high school, as they currently eat breakfast in their classrooms and lunch in the gym. They're also adding student parking lot, because the parking is at a premium, and will expand their campus entrance and exit to alleviate some of their traffic issues. So they're requesting $25,000 to assist in the funding of those projects. So I wanted to ask if you're open to considering that.
What school?
This is the prep school,
Prep.
the charter
Oh, the prep
school.
school.
Yes, ma'am.
I started this because I felt like there are Edgecombe County students out there, and it is a show place. It has a good reputation. And as a board, we fund education, and I didn't even think they should have been put in the mix with the first 10 that we chose. So I was the one that requested this, I guess you'd say.
Is it a motion?
So moved.
I'll
Second.
second it, yeah.
You can
I
second.
was trying to
Val
second
wants a
it.
second.
Questions?
Question.
Go ahead.
This school is made up of Edgecombe, Nash, Martin. It's about 7 different counties of those kids that go there. I want to find out, are they being asked the same thing?
Good question. I thought they were all.
Oh, well, I'm voting no.
Prep, it is public education. You can go from anywhere. They can come from anywhere to go to those schools. So I think it's our school. It's in our county. And it can benefit those. I'm in support of it. I think they should request that. I agree with you. I think they should be requesting from anywhere, but I think, it's here in our county, and they're ours. And I'm in support of it. Any other questions or comments?
The traffic is an issue, so I'm glad that they're addressing that, because there's already been major accidents of them getting in and out of that school. So if they're using it to help that situation, then I'm 100% for it.
Is something else we need to know?
It's after this, something I
Okay.
forgot earlier, but I'll bring back.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, let it be known by the vote sign aye.
Aye.
All opposed, bring it on back, Ms. Evans. We just
I'll
did it.
I'll
Okay.
finish up my list first,
Okay.
and I'll let them know. Thank you
Go
for
ahead.
that. You have, Ms. Faison reached out to you, I believe, last week regarding our proposed draft legislative goals for submittal to the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners. I believe you all saw a list of these, and it was sent out to you, but if you have any recommended changes or additions that you'd like to share, just let us know. Also, you have a copy at your place a list of capital projects, looks like this. List of capital projects submitted for funding, sales tax funding from Edgecombe School System. You'll recall that, I believe it's Article 40 and 42, sales tax, that a percentage of each of those is to be used for capital funding for our schools. And so what we've asked the school system to do is to communicate with us how they use that. We've been having conversations about this for months. And, you know, the list has been somewhat fluid, but they've gotten to this point. We have been putting that in a reserve fund that accumulates. It has to be spent on capital projects. And so you'll see here that they have a list that's totaling a little over $600,000 that they're submitting, proposing the use of these sales tax funds for. And so unless there's some objection from the board, then Ms. Barfield will proceed with transferring that amount from sales tax to the school system.
The balance of 600, the balance of that money.
The 600 and...
660.
They said the grand total is 393,558.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that's correct. That's right. She will transfer to 393.
The 393.
That's correct.
That's what they're requesting of
Yes,
the balance.
that's correct.
Okay.
Didn't we already transfer that?
We transferred into a capital reserve, in our own reserve that's sitting there
I
accumulating.
thought we put it in there, capital reserve.
No, not
So
there.
they're requesting 393 of that.
Yes, sir.
So,
Is there a motion?
some of,
Second?
Second.
Question? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Okay, approved.
And the last thing, which thankfully I got good staff that remind me when I forget stuff. I meant to discuss this back when we were talking about the finance. You'll recall that on that list of potential projects and purchases, it included a new loader at the transfer station for solid waste. And so the last time I discussed this with you, I talked about how that loader was on its last leg, but they were keeping it together, and that was my error. Staff had shared with me, and I had just simply forgot. That loader has been sitting on the sidelines for months.
The loader died?
Yes.
It died between
been dead.
last time and the day.
It's already dead.
It needs a new motor. We've been spending money on it, but it will be throwing good money after bad. They're using now a backhoe that we purchased a year ago, maybe. And that backhoe is not built for that kind of work, so we're really wearing out that backhoe. So I would ask you to consider taking action to appropriate $280,000 from fund balance to solid waste capital outlay lines so that we can move forward with purchasing a new loader. They've already gotten quotes on that, and it comes in just under $280,000.
Go ahead, Mr. Law.
Weren't we originally saying $100,000?
No, that was for something else. That was a mini excavator. Yeah, that was separate.
Motion.
They want that too, and I think they're listening in on this meeting, asking me why am I not asking for that too, but I don't want to push my luck tonight. So.
You didn't think you need to go there? Okay.
I know when to quit most of the
so
time.
you saying solid waste doesn't have that? their budget that they
Unfortunately, solid waste does not have a reserve. You'll recall that it's been operating on a deficit for years. We've been working to close that deficit, which we have some, and our goal is to continue moving in that direction. But this is a critical piece of equipment. If you've been up there to the transfer station, when you go up to dump household waste or things like that, this is the big piece of machinery that pushes it into that trailer that's then taken to Bertie County. And it is a real critical piece of our operations up there.
And we're breaking another piece trying to make that.
That's all right.
Is that motion?
I make that motion.
Second. Questions? All in favor, let it be known by the voting sign of aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, I believe I didn't hear no no's on that one, so we all right on that. We need that one. We
Yeah, I
need
needed
that
that
one.
one.
Okay,
Gotcha.
okay.
Trash is important.
And that's all I have, Mr. Chairman, for manager's report.
Anything from commissioners?
I need to ask a question. A lady texted me while we were talking. wanting to know why the credit card, debit card machine in the office where you pay taxes and the water bill is not working.
I'm the one
It's
downstairs.
been down for 3 weeks.
Ain't no money, in it. Somebody ain't put no money in it. What is it? ATM?
I can
Tax-
answer that,
tax
but
lady.
I don't know if Jason's still in here.
Ain't no money in it, is it?
So, the telephone lines are what operate the credit card machines, and, those, system from that old, box that we had prior to the voice over IP was installed, received some damage due to all the rain that we received during her, tropical storm Debbie. So they went down then, and we've had, because we're under state contract with NCDIT for those phone services, we had to go through state to put in a ticket to get new telephone lines, and that fixed, and, the update is that they're coming Thursday to do that. So, it's unfortunate, but we do have to wait on our vendor to repair those phone lines for us. So,
Yeah, 'cause, you know, a lot of our millennials, they don't know what cash is.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
all right, I will respond, thank you.
It's out of money. Any other commissioners?
The town of Tarboro has recently restarted their development grant, where they're sourcing developers for 25 lots or more, and they're offering $5,000 back if, at the completion of the project, for the infrastructure build out of that. I would love for the county to start exploring a way that we could support that to entice some developers to come, and then maybe a county program as well on housing and what that looks like. The feedback that I've gotten from the town of Tarboro is that $5,000 is nice, but it's not enough to get the developers to really come and commit. So if we could find some way to help them, and I don't know what that looks like. I've started kind of toying with some different ideas of what that could look like, but if we could start to have a little bit more formal conversation around. Sure.
I think that leads into the same question that maybe Ms. Harris was raising earlier.
Yeah.
And ties in with some type of incentive program for housing. And I would say as a board, I think that I've heard no objections in terms of maybe staff looking at how we can get into some type of a program to, that will help with the development of housing. Okay.
And asking the manager, Lewis, because he's done a round before of this. And he had, in my short conversation with him, he had a lot of advice and different things. And so I think we can kind of leverage his experience
And I
what
think
that looks like.
Rocky Mount's getting into it, and I think that with the announcement of probably what we're doing at Kingsborough, there's gonna be a need. And so look at something that you can present to us.
Yes.
And, even from the Get Off the List committee
Advisory board, yes, sir.
that's dealing with that, suggestions come out of there. I would agree, it appears that we are supportive of it.
Okay. Be happy to. Yes, sir.
Any other commissioners?
We had a man that appeared tonight for the second time, and he stated the same thing tonight he stated the last time. He did not receive a phone call, and I've said this many times in these meetings. County employees, I don't care who you are, should respond when you get a call somehow, some way. I don't care. If that man comes back again and says he's calling,
I contacted the sheriff that same night. And according to him, someone had talked with this gentleman. Some of the things he wanted to do, as the lady said, you have to go down to the sheriff's office to be vetted. You can't just go down there and volunteer. So, that's what your volunteer from the animal shelter told us.
yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about just calling the citizen back about
Yeah.
what he wants to do.
That's what I told him. And according to him, he had talked to him.
There's no excuse for not doing it.
And that goes for every department.
Right. Every person, every department.
And just to clarify, well, I don't know if that was, when he said he came by to see me, I wasn't in my office, but he talked to Mr. Matthews. He didn't leave a message for me to call him back.
No, I think he said he'd called the sheriff.
Right.
And never heard from him, and then came back tonight and said he'd called the sheriff and never heard from him.
Well, he need to go and talk to the sheriff, but the sheriff's not calling back. We can't make the sheriff call him back. So we gonna send that message, okay, sheriff, holds his elected position. So,
The sheriff's not the only one that I hear about not
No,
returning
no,
phone
no,
calls,
right.
so.
well, you know,
Okay.
but I think one thing the board needs to consider, somebody standing there making an allegation is something that before we decide that we're gonna speak on it, needs to be determined if that did happen. It's an allegation that comes to the board until such time as, if we wanted to investigate it, then we can make a determination as to whether it really happened. But we hear all kinds of allegations coming up there. And,
Just to get on the record.
but in terms of saying that it's factual, to me, it's not a fact until such time as, we make a determination from some type of question that is in fact what happened. Anybody else to speak? It appears that do we need another closed session?
Nothing from staff.
Is there a need from the board for a closed session? Hearing none, long session, motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second, questions? All in favor, let